All right, homework day 5, continuing with that factoring stuff. These ones are like those ones where we left off, except for now we also have a variable on the end value as well as at the beginning. But basically the factoring is exactly the same as what we just got done doing. So there's 3 terms. We're going to use our 2 sets of parentheses. And we're starting with the factors of 5x squared. So for 5x squared we would have what? X and 5x, exactly. Then we follow the same rules for our signs. If the end is negative, what are our signs? A positive and a negative. And we may have to switch them around, but we're just going to start with a positive and a negative and go from there. So now the only difference is now we have a negative 14y squared, which means we're going to have a y with our number. Again, for 14, it's probably a 2 and a 7, or 2y and 7y. We have to figure out what order it should go in. So, what should we try? Do we want to put the 2 first or the 7 first? We want to get a minus 3xy in the middle. Okay, so we're going to put 2y and 7y. We've got that variable with it. And then we're going to check it the same way we did before. Our outside product, x times negative 7y, would be negative 7xy. Our inside product, 2y times 5x, positive 10xy. Negative 7 plus 10 is a plus 3xy. We wanted a minus 3 instead of a plus 3, which means everything's in the right order, but all we're going to do is switch our signs and do the negative first and then the positive. So make that one the negative and that one the positive, so that our outside is a positive 7, our inside is a minus 10, and then we get the minus 3 instead of the positive 3. So if you get the right number but the wrong sign, just switch your signs around. Number 2, that's one of those tricky ones again, because there's 2 different ways to get 4x squared. One way of getting 4x squared would be what? What times what would give me 4x squared? 2x and 2x, right? 2 times 2 is 4. The other way of getting 4x squared is 1x times 4x, right? So it's just like that one before where we had the 6. We've got 2 different ways it might start, and we don't know which way it is. So I like to write them both down just to remind myself. We don't know which one it is. My signs. The end is positive, so both signs are the same as the middle. So we know our signs are both going to be negative. Negative and a negative. Now we have a 6y squared. So if I have 6y squared, I might have a y and a 6y, or a 3y and a 2y. And I have to figure out in those things where that fits to get a minus 11xy in the middle. So I'm just kind of guessing and checking. I'm going to start up here, and I'm just going to do my y and my 6y. Doesn't matter which order they go in. If I check that, I'm going to get a negative 12 and a negative 2, which is going to be too big, right? So then I'm going to say, okay, maybe it's the 3 and the 2. Since these are 2's, it doesn't matter what order they go in. I don't have to be quite as careful when I have the same coefficients there. And I check that. I'm going to get a negative 4xy and a negative 6xy. Well, negative 4 plus negative 6 is negative 10. That's not the right middle number either, right? So then I'm going to go down to the bottom one. Bottom one, I have to think a little bit more when I plug them in. If I try the y and the 6y, I don't want 6 times 4. That's going to be way too big. So I'm going to put the y first and the 6y here and check it. That's going to give me negative 6 and negative 4. Still doesn't work. So then I better try the 3 and the 2. Let's see, 3 and 2. If I put the 3 here, that's already going to be 12. That's going to be too big, so I better put the 2 first and then the 3 second. Now if I check it, I get a negative 3xy on the outside. I get negative 8xy on the inside. And sure enough, negative 3 plus negative 8 is negative 11. So after all that guessing, I finally found it. So go ahead there and try number 3. I'm going to move the board up so I have more room to write. At least it started with a 2x squared. That should be an easier one to start with. So you started this one and said, how do I get 2x squared?
X and 2x.
Exactly, x and 2x. And then you said, what are my signs going to be? Positive and a negative, because the end is negative. I know I have one of each. Then we get to the harder part. We get the factors of 21. What pair of factors do you think you probably use for 21?
3 and 7.
3 and 7, or 3y and 7y, since we have y's on those, right? We want just a 1 xy in the middle. So, you want to try the 3 first or the 7 first? Probably the 3, because 7 times 2 is already 14, and we only want 1. So let's put the 3y first and the 7y. When you multiply, what's your outside product? Negative 7xy, and your inside product is
6.
positive 6xy. And when you do negative 7 plus 6, what do you get?
1.
Negative 1, right? We want to end up with a positive 1, so how do we fix our problem? Just switch our signs around. Exactly. So we want that to be a negative, that to be a positive, and that switches all my signs, and then I should be good. So x minus 3y times 2x plus 7y should be my answer.